Okay, so in this recording, I'm going to talk about C.S. Lewis' Till We Have Faces, and specifically about the Priest of Ungit, at least very briefly. And I'm looking at an episode on page 50, and that is in the first part in chapter 5. And this is where the Priest of Ungit comes to the palace, and the king is worried. And this is after Psyche has gone out and she healed people, and then she was being called the accursed because those sickness and things weren't going right. So the same people who embraced her as a goddess now have turned against her. Okay, and so the priest of Ungit has brought this news that Ungit is not happy, and and people have seen a brute around, and that there has to be a sacrifice to Ungit. And so at this point, you have so the fox is present for all of this, okay, and he's challenging all these claims about seeing the brute, and he is trying to show by reason that some of these claims don't make sense, right? And then he's also challenging what the priest is saying about the that Undrik needs a sacrifice. He's saying, well, on one hand, you're saying that this person who's going to be sacrificed is going to be eaten by the god, but on the other hand, this person is going to be the bride of the god. Like, this stuff doesn't make sense, right? And he was trying to make the argument to the king. So the priest of Undred now responds on page 50, and this is interesting, revealing something about the priest. So here we want to present the priest as, so I'll say the priest of Undred, it represents faith, okay? I'll just say the ultimate nature of faith, okay? Which is, so what I mean is ultimate nature of faith is that faith deals with ultimate things. Okay, and reason just can't get that far, right? Reason is limited, right? So it's not with the priest of Andre, it's not that reason is bad. It's just very limited. It's it's secondary, so to speak. Okay. So this is how the priest responds to the fox. He says, "We are hearing much Greek wisdom this morning." So essentially, again, the priest represents. Um, so we're saying the fox represents philosophy and slash reason. Okay, and the priest is going to represent the primacy of faith. All right. So what we see here is that he says, "We're hearing much Greek wisdom this morning, King," said the priest, "and I have heard most of it before." Okay, so he's heard Greek philosophy before. He said, "I did not need a slave to teach it to me. It is very subtle," right? So he compliments, let's just say philosophy, right? That it is subtle. That means it's very intelligent. It's got all these very clever distinctions. It's good for what it is, right? But this is what it ultimately comes down to. He says, "But it brings no rain and grows no corn. Sacrifice does both," right? So basically said, philosophy brings no rain and grows no corn, right? Essentially does not yield ultimate results. So this is of an evidence-based claim. He's saying that when we look at the evidence, when you need rain and when you need food to eat, you pray to the gods, right? Philosophy is not going to do that for you. Now, if you recall with the fox, okay, recall that we said for him, reason was basically what is in accordance with nature, and we described it as sort of evidence-based speaking. So in both cases, both men seem to be speaking approaching um, sort of speech by the idea of speech by evidence, right? You go with what the evidence leads you to, but it's clear they're looking at what they consider evidence is different. So in the case of the priest of Ungit, he's looking at this ultimate thing, which is, look, philosophy may be smart, subtle, and it may accomplish all these things, but the bottom line is, when you need something important like rain, when you need food, right? Philosophy is not going to do that to you. Sacrifice will, right? If you pray to the gods, you will get them. You will get what you need if you do the right things. All right. So he's going to make a few claims about philosophy. So philosophy does not bring rain or food. Okay. He goes on to say it does not even give them boldness to die. So philosophy does not give boldness to die. So this is quite the claim. If you recall with Plato, Plato says philosophy is a preparation for death. Right? At least that's its general idea, that it's a preparation for death. But what he's saying, well, if that's the case, then philosophy fails because it doesn't give one the boldness to die. So why does he say that? He says, that Greek there is your slave because in some battle he threw down his arms and let them bind his hands and lead him away and sell him rather than take a spear thrust in his heart. Right? So he's saying ultimately, here's the ultimate evidence here is if this Greek man who is the epitome of philosophy was ready for death, then he would have died. But he didn't. Rather, he surrendered, and now he's here as a slave, right? And so he says, well, so there we go. Philosophy doesn't give one the boldness to die. And then the third thing he says about philosophy brings us to the heart of the priest of Ungit's approach. He says, much less does it give them understanding of holy things. So this is important, holy things. Now, if you recall, so in the short video on the fox spoke about divine nature, right? And he made a claim that the divine nature is not jealous, and so I pointed out that the fox was not did not disregard or dismiss divine nature. He just felt that philosophy was a way to understand that, and philosophy is very precise, right? And tries to clarify things in ways that make sense. Now, what the priest of Ungit is saying is, no, you cannot reduce holy things, right, to make them satisfy the rules of philosophy, right? So that's the category we're dealing with here. Is we're dealing with holy things, okay? So he says that in philosophy they demand to see such things clearly, as if the gods were no more than letters written in a book, right? So philosophy demands clarity. Now, so let's put this here, philosophy. So I'll just move this down. So philosophy demands clarity, okay? So that's a criticism. And if you recall, with Bonaventure in his Journey of the Mind to God, he says that we should seek, I believe said we should seek darkness, not clarity, right? So with Bonaventure, at that chapter 7, that stage where we encounter God, at that point, he makes the point that your concepts fail, and clarity is not what you should be seeking, but actually the divine darkness. Okay, so Bonaventure and the priests of Ungit seem to have this resonance. So going back to this idea of holy things, he says, I, king, have dealt with the gods for 3 generations of men, and I know they dazzle our eyes and flow in and out of one another like eddies on the river. And he says, and nothing that is said clearly can be said truly about them. Okay, so nothing that is said clearly can be said truly about them. So this is an interesting statement. It's a very powerful statement. That means if you have any clear statement, okay, can't be true. So, and let me actually clarify this. Any clear statement about holy things, okay, slash the gods, okay, can't be true. That's just the way it is from the priest of Ungit's perspective. Is that if you are saying anything that's clear, that's well structured, that's contained, that it just can't be true because that's not the nature of the gods. It says holy places are dark places. Okay. Again, this is much like Bonaventure's divine darkness, right? The closer you in Bonaventure, the closer you get to God, the more your concepts break down, and the darker it becomes, right? So holy places are dark places, and then the priest of Ungit goes on to say, "It is life and strength, not knowledge and words that we get in them." Right. So the encounter with holy things, the encounter with gods, produces life and strength, not knowledge and words. All right, so this is sort of interesting, right? At some point, he's saying all the subtlety that we have, right? Really, the closer we get to God, should just pretty much break down. We should recognize our limitations, right? So he's calling for some certain sort of humility, right? That we shouldn't have the hubris to believe that we can define the divine, right, in ways that satisfy us. Rather, we maybe just have to be content with speaking in a confused fashion about the divine because it's not that clear to us. It says, "Holy wisdom is not clear and thin like water, but thick and dark like blood." So he says, okay, so why should the accursed not be both best and worst? All right, so just look at this statement here. He's saying two things that, okay, so we can, the accursed is best, and the accursed is, so let's just substitute best here, not best. Oh, let's substitute worst. Okay. So what he's saying is something is and it's not that thing in the same respect. Okay, he's using that word, best and worst on the same spectrum there, right? And according to logic, these statements should be mutually exclusive. Okay, so that means that you shouldn't be able to say, have a statement like this, that the accursed is best and the curse is not best, right, is worst. But but the priest of Ungit is saying, yeah, that's very possible when you're talking with the gods. All right, so we see with the priest of Ungit, right, there is the elevation, the primacy of faith, because faith deals with ultimate things, and reason is just not able to reach that level. Reason only gets us so far, but faith deals with ultimate things. And so for the priest of Ungit, faith is what should be considered primary, and then philosophy, while its merits may be recognized, is understood to be limited.